Okay, there we go. We are live. Welcome everybody to the round table. I'm Scott Nichols, and my wife Jackie is going to read our disclaimer really quick.
Thanks, babe. By listening to the Ramblers, the Roundtable podcast, we acknowledge that the hosts, guests, and contributors are not responsible for any actions or decisions you take based on the information presented. And with that, Brett, I'm going to pass it to you. Please introduce yourself and tell us about our guest today.
Well, thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Scott. Great to be here with you guys for 2026, the year of change. So time will tell. We're joined for some dear friends of mine, actually. They can probably introduce themselves better than I can. So I'm going to pass it over to Daniela and Craig. Introduce yourself and maybe tell the story of how you guys met, because it's an interesting and beautiful story. Over to you guys.
Hello, everyone, and we are so honored to be with you all, and it's time to be here and the planet to shine. And we met last year in May on Sarah Brexman Cosme Egypt trip in front of the Sphinx, and we remember each other, and here we are together and sharing now coming masculine and feminine energy coming together, and so super excited. And we know Brett beautifully, and we met again in Glastonbury and Avalon, and here we are coming together as one.
Yes, I'll introduce myself as well. So I'm Craig. My name is Vieira. I'm a professor. I teach at the University of the Pacific, and that's in California. And I have a background in where I work on spiders. I've been working on spider silk. A lot of individuals are interested in the material properties of silk because it's stronger than steel. And so my research lab has focused on trying to understand the proteins that are actually in the fibers and how they relate to the mechanical properties. And what a lot of people don't know is that spiders can spin 7 different silk types that have different mechanical properties. And so that's probably why that you see 8 legs, is they can actually pull multiple fiber types to make composite silks with different mechanical properties. So I've been trying to understand the proteins and identify the different proteins and their sequences and relate that to the material properties. So I have a background in cloning genes. I use a lot of biochemistry, a lot of molecular biology, and we've actually been able to clone a number of different genetic blueprints for spider silk proteins and bacteria. We can purify the proteins and spin them into artificial silk fibers and then test the material properties. So that's a little bit on my background. I've done a lot of like micro dissections of black widow spiders. So a lot of people maybe be familiar with black widow spiders because the females have a red hourglass that's on their abdomen. And that, as we were doing a lot of dissections with the spider, I kept wondering, like, why is this red hourglass present on the abdomen? Most people identify it based on fear to stay away from black widow spiders because they actually, if they bite you, their fangs are strong enough to pierce through your skin, and then they put a variety of different neurotoxins into the individual, and it can range from invertebrates to vertebrates. So normally people are taught to not really mess with them. They're not really aggressive. I keep them. I've got a whole bunch of them in the laboratory, and so I kept just looking at that hourglass that was present and wondering why it was there. The ecologists were telling me it was largely there so birds would know not to mess with them, but then it was just like, with 40,000 different spider species, why are they like ones that only have the hourglass? And so that kind of led me into where I started to think more deeply about why that hourglass was there. And at the same time, I was being drawn to Nikola Tesla's work and so I started to dive into a lot of the applications of what he put forward. And most, I think, people that have looked into his work know that he's probably one of the most brilliant scientists that was on the planet as far as we in our kind of memory. And he developed alternating current, which is carried to all the houses, and that's huge for our energy in our homes and all of our devices. He also came up with the electric motor and so many other things as well. And so as such a genius, I started looking into his mathematics. So he had this vortex mathematics, which has to do with doubling of numbers. And like if you take the number 1 and then you double it to 2, and you double 2 to 4, and then you double 4 to 8, and double 8 to 16, it becomes 16. And then if you take the 16 and you compress 16 into a single digit, the 1 and the 6 is a 7. Okay, so this is the 1 plus the 6. And if you double 16, you get 32. And that's a 3 and a 2 or a 5. Now, if you keep doubling the numbers, this pattern will repeat. The 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5.
Now we're going to details.
Yeah, will continue to repeat itself because it's describing how energy flows. And
the hourglass looks like this, that everybody knows, and that's the book. And
yes.
Yes.
So the hourglass is what I'll connect it to is the hourglass actually represents how the universe breathes. The universe actually exhales, and then the energy will go out, and it's magnetic energy that's going out. And numerically, you'll see that I can represent that with the number 6. And then the energy will turn around and it will come back, which is more of an inhale. And that can be represented by the number 3. And that's what maybe in physics they would call the dielectric. So we have a toroidal field that's being formed, but we have energy that's going out, and then it's returning. Okay, which is the magnetic is the expansion going out, and then the return waves are coming back in, and then they go back into the constriction point on the hourglass, and that is like the stillness or the pause. So you have a complete like breath cycle with the exhale being the 6, the inhale being the 3, and then the 9 is being the pause. So you get his 3, 6, 9. And so it's a cycle. It's describing an actual cycle. And so I decided to put the doubling of the numbers, that 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5. I decided to model that and put this back onto the hourglass. And I put 3 of the digits, the 1, 2, 4, on the top triangle that's inverted. Okay. And then on the bottom triangle, I put the 8, 7, 5. Okay. So, but then what most people had, and you can find the doubling of numbers, and it's in the literature. It's also, you see it a lot. I'll give you an example of it being seen, the energy flow in biology. So if you take a single cell and like an egg that was just fertilized by a sperm, and it's a single cell, it will then divide and go from 1 cell to 2. And then those 2 cells will copy themselves and go to 4. And then they'll go from 4 to 8, 8 to 16, 16 to 32. So you're seeing the same energetic circuit with the 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5. And you're seeing it in biology in an actual life of how individuals develop. And this is like constant across all animals. The interesting thing also too is that you can run the energy backwards. So if you take the number 1 and divide it by 2, you get 0.5. And then if you take 0.5, divide that by 2, you get 0.25. And so you're going backwards. Instead of going 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5, you go 5, 7, going backwards, 5, 7, 8, 4, 2, 1. So you're able to, so now we're into music and harmonics and octaves, how you can double the frequency and you increase the octave. So the numbers and following how the energy flows is showing shows a harmonic pattern. And so I also then thought, okay, where'd you put the 3 and the 6? Because it doesn't show up in the doubling. If you notice the 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5, the numbers 3, 6, and 9 are not present. They're not there. So on the hourglass, I decided then to put them, the 3 and the 6, the 3 on the left side of the hourglass, and then the 6 on the right side. And I made where the constriction point was, I made it 0 and 9, as the energy would go out with the 9, and when it comes back in, it would be to 0. And the 3 and the 6 are on the left and the right side of this respectively. So now you have off the left side of the hourglass, which is the vertical portion, you have the numbers 1, 3, 8. And then down the center of the hourglass, you have the number 2, 9 or 0, and then you have 7. And then on the right, you have the 4, 6, 5. And you can take and go around what looks like, it actually looks like the Great Pyramid. It actually, the hourglass with the gas lines, if you look in the book, you'll see that if you were to pull the constriction point up, where we could say the constriction point is like a singularity, you could kind of pull it up and you could collapse it, and you would see a square base pyramid exactly like you see, yes, in Egypt. And then what people don't realize is there are creases. So there's 4 triangles with a square base. Okay. So you have 4 equilateral triangles with a square base. And there's actually a crease right in the middle. If you go to Egypt, you'll see the triangles right down the center have creases. Those creases are very important energetically speaking, so you don't get harmful energy being trapped in the actual structure. So once I saw this and I put that, there's some very interesting things with the numbers that showed up with the 138, 297, and the 465, which I can get into. But then I also made a connection with the numbers. I started to think there has to be the geometry. Geometry must be somehow mapped back onto the structure. And as I mentioned before, the hourglass represents the breadth of the universe, but it also represents Nikola Tesla's etheric lattice. And it's one form of how it could be represented. And I'll get into that when I talk about what that etheric lattice structure looks like. But he did say that if you understood the 369, you would have the keys to the universe. And he's absolutely correct, because then you're going to see how these numbers will trace back to the etheric lattice and how energy actually flows in coherency into geometric structures, which is quite amazing. How he figured this out without a computer blows my mind. But it's all there. And so I'll describe a little bit about the geometry, because I want to lay it back onto those numbers, the 1, 2, 4, the 8, 7, 5, how they appear on that hourglass. Because why geometry? Yep.
And yeah, before we dive too far into it, can you maybe, like, because some of our listeners might not have, really get the full, comprehension of what, sacred geometry is. Maybe you can, like, break it down a little bit maybe for them.
Okay, let me break the sacred geometry down. So as far as the geometry that a lot of people are familiar with. It's Euclidean geometry. So people may be familiar with the tetrahedron, which is basically 4 triangles that are kind of put together. Tetra is 4. Or they may be familiar with the octahedron, okay, where you have 8 triangles that are put together. A cube, also maybe an icosahedron. These are known throughout history. Fire is represented by the tetrahedron, historically speaking. So these are platonic solids, and the platonic solids are, as you have them, the platonic solids are known when you have the same, I'll call it a polygon. It's a 2-dimensional structure like a triangle. If you put 4 triangles together, they're all the same. So you have a tetrahedron. And then you can have a cube. Everybody, if you take squares and you put squares together, you can form a cube. That is the Earth, represented as the Earth. The icosahedron is if you take triangles, 20 triangles, and you put them together, you'll get a structure that's referred to as water. And then the octahedron is like air. So these particular structures, these platonic solids, which you can see them listed here. So you actually have the tetrahedron, which is here. This is a square-based pyramid, like in Egypt. And then you have other structures. You see as a circle that's there. And their relationship is that these structures, you can measure their internal angles. So if you get into looking at geometry, you can sum the internal angles of a triangle, and an equilateral triangle has 180 degrees. So it has 3 internal angles that are 60 degrees. Why is it important that we measure the internal angles of these geometric structures? Is because as you sum them up, it relates to volume and magnitude and how much energy, how much magnetism that you can pack into the structure and have it be stable and have energy cycle. You think of it as like you're putting light into a container, and you have to have stable containers to have the energy cycle through. And so you can see a variety of different containers. So I actually started to look at the most, and I was using a lot of the mathematics from Buckminster Fuller, who was a very famous geometrist, and he had a book, Synergetics, and I was really following a lot of his work, and he was stating that the tetrahedron with the 4 triangles was the most stable structure on the planet, and everything is triangles and everything is based on tetrahedrons. He was packaging this as the fundamental unit of how space is like compartmentalized. And so I started to look at the numbers, and I'll throw out a few of these geometric structures, but let me paint where I'm going to go with this, because it turns out to be important that we understand how the system I have right now, I'm going to call it, it's a whole number, because I'm going to show you using whole numbers and rational numbers. Whole numbers, I think everybody's familiar with 1, 2, 3, 4. Rational numbers can be whole numbers, or they can also be repeating numbers, but they are not irrational numbers. They're not like pi. They're not like the golden mean ratio. Those are irrational numbers. They don't repeat. They just go on forever. Okay, but my system that I'm describing here that connects with Tesla's work uses whole numbers and rational numbers, not irrational numbers. And so when I started to look at the geometry, where this will go will be, which maybe some people don't realize, is that when the ancient Egyptians were building their structures, they were very aware of how specific geometries and angles and lengths, if you put them together in the physical 3D and you build those structures, how they're able to connect with this invisible grid between you and me, which this is the etheric lattice. They clearly knew what this was, and which is loaded with energy. And they were able to, by resonance, pull the energy from the etheric lattice to their physical structures and bring the energy there so they would become, it would help them become very highly energetic. Okay, so imagine that you have an invisible space between me and you. There is this invisible grid that is geometric and it's loaded with energy. But in order for you to pull the energy to you through resonance, you must match that structure. Okay, so you must be able to match it to pull the energy to you. And it would be similar to, because Tesla was all about resonance. Tesla with energy, everything he looked at was really what I would say is scalar resonance. And he wasn't using force, Newtonian force, which isn't what is commonly used in physics. So let me give you an example of the difference between the two. If I had like a glass and I wanted to break it, I could bring a sledgehammer and smash it using force. Okay, and I would break the glass. Or I could sing and match the frequency of the molecules that are making up the glass, and I could become entangled with it and we have resonance with it. And through resonance, the energy is going to build and become amplified, and the glass would shatter. I'm not even close. I don't have to get close to the glass. This is a transfer of energy through resonance. It's a communication. And this is what Tesla was using. And this is what the ancient Egyptians were doing. But they understood also the etheric lattice and the geometry and the numbers and what to do to pull the energy to that location. They left it in the hieroglyphs. I can already see it in the weighing of the heart hieroglyph, which is one of the most famous hieroglyphs that Thoth, one of the Egyptian gods, is well known, who was a teacher of liberal arts and sciences and left the information behind. It's in the hieroglyphs. But most historians will not be able to see this because they won't understand the geometry and the mathematics that I have that connects back to this etheric lattice, which is all explained in the book. So they were aware of it. It's resonance. I'll give you one other example, like soldiers walking across a bridge. If they get in the right cadence, the right rhythm, and it matches the structure of the bridge, and that you get resonance, the whole bridge will come down. You don't need to drop a bomb on it and use force. You can actually have it come down through resonance. And so this is what Tesla was very interested in. So I was pretty certain then that, because if you look at what the largest pyramid in Egypt, in Cairo, you're going to see that it's a square-based pyramid. And I was looking at a lot of Buckminster Fuller's work, and he was looking at the tetrahedron, but he was looking at it with the 4 triangles. And really, the square-based pyramid has 4 triangles in a square. But you can draw a line through the square and make 2 other triangles. So you could say it's really 6 triangles because everything is really triangular. And so I started to go and look at the internal summation of the angles. And so I'm going to explain like one of them. And because you can find a lot of this in the book, and the numbers, people sometimes, when I put a lot of numbers out, they go into shutdown mode because there's so many numbers. So, but I'm going to use the square-based pyramid as the example. So the square at the bottom, in Euclidean geometry, the internal angle of a square, if you go in, there are 4 of them, and they're 90 degrees. Each one is 90 degrees. And so 4 times 90 is 360 degrees. So the square base of the pyramid is 360 degrees. That's the internal summation. And then it has 4 triangles. And one triangle, equilateral triangle, it has 60 degrees as the internal angle, and there are 3 of them. So each, that's 180 degrees times 4, or 720 degrees plus 360, the base, you get 1080. Okay, so the internal summation of the square base pyramid is 1080 or 1080. Okay, so I want to look at that because I'm going to show you how I mapped it back onto that hourglass. Remember, the hourglass goes 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5. And the 1 and the 8 are across from one another. Okay, now look at 1080. It goes 1, and then the last 3 digits goes 0, 8, 0. If you add those together, that's 8. The first 1 is by itself, so it's a 1, and the 8 would go on the bottom. Are you guys seeing what I'm saying there? So you have the 1, and then you have the 8. It's not on that. You have the 1 and the 8. And then so that corresponds to the square base pyramid. Then if you go to the next position, there's a 2 and a 7. Because remember, it goes 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5. And the 2 and the 7 are across from one another. So if you take 1080 times 2, you'll get 2160. Okay, that's the summation of the internal angles. So then you take the first digit to 2, and then last 3 digits are 160. You add the 1 and the 6, and you get the 7. Okay, so the 2 and the 7, I can map the 2160 Euclidean geometric structure back onto the hourglass. I can do the same thing for the 4 and the 5. In short, that is, if you take 1080 and you multiply it by 4, you're going to get 4320, and you can put the 4 and the 5 back onto that hourglass. So in short, and I could go with the 3 and the 6, I can keep doing this with 1080 times 3, 1080 times like 5, 6, 7, and I can lay out all those geometric structures back onto that hourglass, which means that there's a connection with the harmonics and the doubling of the numbers and the geometry. Okay, are you following that? So that was the first part of, and I was really excited when I had that because I was connecting Euclidean geometry with Nikola Tesla's, with the doubling of the numbers and the harmonics. And then I noticed something else that was really profound. So before I go on, let me just describe a little bit, go back. So 1080 is the square base pyramid. I'm just going to throw out some of these that are known structures in the Platonic solids. So 1080 is not a Platonic solid, but it is an important geometric structure. It's more Archimedean solid because it has a square. They're not all triangles if you consider the square, even though I broke it into 2 triangles. And it has 4 other triangles. So, but it has 2160 would be the cube, or also in my system, I would say it's 2 square-based pyramids put together, and you'll form the either an octahedron or you'll form a cube. And then at 4320, the 4 and the 5 correspond to the rhombic dodecahedron, which is 12 diamonds that are put together, or almost squares that are diamond shaped. So what I'm saying is I'm getting known geometric structures that are well known throughout history, and I'm able to map them back on there. But then, as I mentioned, something else more profound happened. I noticed a whole nother set of geometry that was running in parallel to normal Euclidean geometry. So let me explain. Euclidean geometry is geometry that is static. It's not in motion. And most people do not know this. They're not aware of this. So when you're looking at the standard Platonic solids that everybody knows and they draw out, those are in a circle that's 360 degree based, and they are static. But I noticed a whole nother set of numbers that were running in parallel that were slightly shifted, phase shifted. And this was the scalar geometry that I would develop. And so For example, I found instead of 1080, I found the square base pyramid was 1089. Okay. And then I found that the octahedron wasn't 2160, it was 2178, and so forth. And I could go down through this list and you'll see I have this whole other parallel geometry that is phase shifted. And you know, they're all phase shifted by the times table 9. So the difference between 1080 and 1089 is 9 degrees. The next structure, 2160 in Euclidean geometry, and scalar, it's 2178. 18-degree difference. The next one, 3240. In my system, it was 32. It's 32. It's the difference is 27. So 3267. It's 27. And actually, it rolls down the whole timetables, like 9, 18, 27, 36, 45. It actually explains where the 9 timetables is coming from. It's the difference between what I'm calling scalar geometry and Euclidean. My geometry that I have is actually geometry in motion, geometry that breathes. Okay, and they're different. And the geometry I have connects back to Nikola Tesla's etheric lattice beautifully. Like it matches perfectly. So I noticed these numbers. So how did I notice these numbers? Like, because I saw the other numbers and they were the scalar geometry, but the way that I found them was, it was not probably what you would think. I discovered these numbers. I was first led by an individual called, his name is Jason Brashears, and he's got a platform called Archaics. And he was doing this little thing about Tesla, and he found this number 2178, which is, it is in the geometry that I have. And this number is incredibly important, but he didn't do much with it. He found it as a number, and I need to talk a little bit about numbers in mere subtraction and what this means, because this opened a whole order of things for me. So I'm going to talk, mere subtraction is a way where you can take numbers, and I'm going to give you an example. You can take a number, like you can say 720, and then you can subtract it from its mirror. So 720, if you minus its mirror, it would be 027 or 27. And then you're going to get a number. And then you can take that number and subtract it from its mirror. And most of the numbers that you try this for will collapse to 0. Okay, if you keep repeating this process. And what that means is the structure is not stable, and it will collapse back into the primordial waters. All potential is everything. Is certain groups describe this differently, but the ancient Egyptians said that all potential, they described it as the primordial waters. The energy is collapsing back and going back to the original source. So if you can sit down and try it. It's very interesting to sit down and put a number down and subtract it by its mirror or its reflection, get that number, take that number, and just keep repeating this process. If it collapses to 0, which most numbers do, it's not a stable structure. But I found numbers that don't collapse to 0, but they go in this loop. Okay, where, so 2178 is one of these numbers. And I'll give you an example so you could actually see how this will happen. I'll give you the number 2475. If you minus it by its mirror, so it's 2475 would be 57. Okay, so 2475, running it backwards, 5742. Okay, if you do that, you're going to get a number that's 3267. If you then minus it by its mirror, you're going to ultimately end up with a number that's 2178. And that number will just, if you take it, it's just going to keep going in a loop. Now, why is that important? Because nature does everything by cycles, energy cycles. It doesn't collapse to the 0. Well, you know what 2178 is? It turns out that is the equivalent of the octahedron, but it's the one that shifted. And you'll also find, I found a whole series of numbers that do this. 1089, 2178, 326, they're all 1089 multiples. And I found, when I first started this, I found 9 numbers. These numbers are incredible because 1089 is one, 2178, 3267, and then I found 45, 34, and then 5445, and then 6534, and all the way, they're all 1089 multiples. But I'm going to show you why these are incredible, because in this series 1089 is there, and 9801 is also, it's mirror, and they will not, these numbers will just keep cycling. Okay, and then another one was, I mentioned 2178, and its mirror 8712 were there. So actually I found 4 pairs of mirrors within these numbers, and then at the center was the actual singularity at 5445. It didn't have a pair because there are 9 numbers and there's 4 pairs. So for example, 1089 and 9801 are a pair. 2178 and 8712 are a second pair. So you guys following these? There were 4 of these pairs and 1 singularity. These were geometric structures that you can map back to the Platonic solids, but they're all the ones that are phase shift and they do not collapse. So what you're looking at here is a set of geometric structures that are based upon the square-based pyramid in Egypt, that the energy, once you put it into these structures, will continually cycle. And it doesn't leak. These are stable containers. 2178 is the light body. It's what holds the energy. The light will circulate in that. It's an octahedral 12-pointed structure that's very, very important. And I noticed that even amongst those 1089 multiple numbers, they actually will collapse to it's like an attractor. They go to 2178 because it's incredibly important numerically speaking. So those numbers, the geometry, then this led me then to trying to understand and make it connected with Nikola Tesla's etheric lattice. So I started to dig deeper, and then things started to show up because I noticed that 33 times 33 is 1089. Okay, so 1089 is the very first structure. That's the square-based pyramid that is shifted from Euclidean geometry by 9 degrees. It's actually breeze. And that one is, why is that one significant? Because it's the fundamental, what I would say is the fundamental frequency or the first harmonic of the whole system. You see it in Leonardo da Vinci's painting. I'm going to take you through history. Watch this. If you go and you look at that painting, and we flew to Milan, Daniela and I flew to Milan in Italy to look at this. And a lot of people have seen it. So Christ is at the center of this painting. Okay, he's the 1089. And then to the left, there are 6 disciples on the left and right, and they're in 2 groups of 3. So you see 33 and 33, or 33 times 33 is an encryption for 1089, the fundamental frequency of the very first harmonic. It's a geometric structure at the base level. And so that's an encryption that was left behind, which is really fascinating. And so I then was very interested in trying to decipher, like with Tesla's 369, it's connected to the etheric lattice. And I'll talk a little bit about this etheric lattice because Tesla was a big supporter of the etheric lattice. In traditional physics, when they hear this word ether, they cringe. And they have been either told through their education that the ether doesn't exist. And mainstream physics, if you talk to most of the physicists, they'll say the ether doesn't exist. They kind of got rid of the ether, and then they had to develop quantum mechanics to bring the ether back. And quantum mechanics is so complicated. Most people don't even understand it. And that's a red flag for something's not, nature's not that complicated. Even Einstein was using terminology like the fabric of space-time. This is all the ether. And it stems from a misconception of one experiment, I think, that was done by Michelson and Morley. And they did an experiment, and they were trying to figure out whether the ether was real. And in their experiment, they suggested that the ether would be, in their hypothesis, a static ether, and they disproved the static ether. But the ether Tesla was talking about actually breathes and it's in motion. And so most of the physicists look at that and they throw away that the ether, they just assume it's static, but it's not. It's actually alive and it actually breathes. And so the ether, in my opinion, is alive. It's how nature and the universe works. It's how it breathes. The geometry breathes. And if you have the right geometry and then you can connect to the etheric lattice and you can pull energy to you. So there's a lot of applications here. But let me go back and just describe to you the etheric lattice, because this is where Tesla's work really shines. So I noticed that because I work on spiders, and I could tell you that there's no, I initially thought, oh, this is just coincidental, but then everything in my lifetime has been synchronized. My phone number last 4 digits was 3969. Every location that I lived at, the house number, the address was digital route 9. And so this is really was pointing me to, and I didn't even work on spiders. Actually, when I arrived at the University of Pacific, my training was in the human immune system, B cells, antibodies. I actually studied genes and transcription of genes. And then I had a colleague arrive several years after I was there and asked me to work on spider silk. She worked on black widow spiders. Her name was Ann Moore. She wanted me to clone the genes. And so I said, okay, because I had that background, we do it. And we wrote a grant. We got $1 million from like the National Science Foundation. And this was early 2000 to do this work. Then she got burned out of just science and became an actuarist, left the university. I continued to work on the spiders, and then noticed the hourglass. But the thing about black widow spiders is that when they spin their webs, they're cob weavers. So their webs, they spin them in the corner of your structure or bushes. They don't have any symmetry to them. What they're actually not beautiful webs at all. They're not like Charlotte. And a lot of people know that Charlotte spins this orb web that looks like a wheel. Okay. Well, it turns out that the hourglass for the etheric lattice is on the black widow spider, but it doesn't spin the wheel. It spins. So there's some distortion that's happened, and it doesn't remember how to spin the actual beautiful wheel. The wheels are being spun by orb weavers like Charlotte. And the actual etheric lattice that I'm going to show you looks like the orb web. Okay, so it looks like a wheel. And so here you have the wheel, which is the etheric lattice being spun by an orb weaver, and the hourglass on a cob weaver. This is like crazy. That can't spin this. So imagine now, I started to do a lot with the pursuit of this, and I won't go into all the details, but I just want you to imagine that you have a wheel, like a circle. And I want you to take that like a pie, a circular pie. And I want you to take 11 slices and put it through there. Okay, so imagine you've got a wheel and you've got 11 slices. And then because it's an actual like orb web, I want you to do 3 circles. Okay, 3 circles. So make one smaller diameter and another a little bit bigger, and then another one a little bit bigger. And I want you to draw from the center point of all of this 11, lines that go out, like you're cutting a pie with 11. So on the first circle in, at the first circle in, the line will cross. There's going to be a node where the circle crosses the line coming out. The point of cross is what I'll call a node. There are 11 nodes on the very first circle, and you go 33, 66, 99, like 132, 165, 198, 231. Are you guys following what? Like you're going in increments of 33, okay, around this thing. You're going to, at the 11 point, which you'd say is the top of the clock of the first circle, you'll hit 363 degrees. That is the scalar circle. It's not 360 degrees, it's 63 degrees. Okay, that's the first circle. So you're going 33, 66. Follow the math on it. If we go with those numbers, 33 is a 6. 3 plus 3 is 6. The 66 is 12. Digital root 1 and 2 is a 3, right? So you got a 6, 3, 99 is 18, or that's a 9. Okay, so you're getting the 3, 6, 9 patterning around the circle. Are you guys following me? Then the second circle, you just continue to pick up. You go from 363 to, you add another 33 to that one, and you go 396, and then you start going around. So you're going to do another 11. So the inner circle has 11 33s. The next circle that's a little bit bigger will have another 11 or 22. You'll go to 22 33s, and the third one you'll go through another 11 or 33. And at the very top is 1089 on one of the radials. So you have 363 on this one radial that's at the top, 726 and 1089. So you have the scalar circle, which is really how the circle is that breathes. It's 363 degrees, not 360. And then you have 726. This is the tetrahedron. It's not 720 like in Euclidean geometry. This one breathes at 726. And then at the very top, you get 1089. Okay, this is the very first. You got to go around 3 times. It's interesting. Tesla's favorite number was 3. You got to go around 3 times to complete one breath cycle. Okay, and you end up at 1089. That's the very first harmonic. Then you can go out and you can put 66s out and you can get the second harmonic. So this then led me all the 1089 multiples of all this. These are the dimensional shells that are talked about. And I mapped actually these to 12, and there are there's a singularity. There's actually 2 singularities in the book. You can read about it. But I think these are the 12 different dimensional levels. And then there's the equivalent of the number 13. People are like, what is this 13? And some people associate it with Ophiuchus, with the zodiac, because there's 12 constellations, and the 13th being it's at the center of the galaxy, because it actually is within that black hole is a 0 point, and that's how you get in and out of this of this galaxy, is through that point. So that's a little bit on you can see the whole lattice of Nikola Tesla. So it really is the 369 if you look at those numbers that go around. And I think if you look at Freemasonry, they tell you that's number 33 is for spiritual levels. No, this number is actually in the etheric lattice for the increments. And those nodes are stable structures that the energy doesn't collapse back into the 0 point. So that's the importance of the grid. So let me just summarize a little bit, because I know there's a lot going on with the entire system. I basically took it from working on just spider silk jeans to noticing this hourglass that's associated with time, because when the energy comes out, they're time stamped. The waves are, and so the hourglasses that are present on the Black Widow spiders, you can model the energy back on these structures. And if you start looking for this hourglass, you will see this structure everywhere in all across the world. But people haven't noticed and modeled the numbers, because it really is on that hourglass with those numbers, you really are describing the breadth of the universe. And it is the same structure that I just described with Nikola Tesla's etheric lattice. They are the same. It's just 2 different ways to represent it. And the significance of this will go into free energy, because if you understand, since invisible space and this etheric lattice is invisible, the ancients knew about it and they were tapping it and using resonance to pull the energy. So if you want planes, for example, right now.
Would you say that, numbers and sacred geometry are universal language? And
Absolutely.
that even insects have seemed to tap into it's in, we've got it in shells, and especially the bee.
Yeah. So all of this, and I haven't really got into something that's called the crystal spiral, but the numbers, the 1, 4, 2. So if you look at the numbers on the hourglass, 1, 2, 4, and then it goes 8, 7, 5. Those numbers, there's no 3, 6, or 9 in those numbers. Interestingly, they're absent, but that pattern series adds up to the number 27. The number 27 is the center part of my hourglass that runs right down the spine of it. It's the stillness, like if you have a vortex, like a tornado, the stillness runs right down the center. The perfect balance runs right down the center. And so the Egyptians were very into the number 7. Okay, so I'm going to release something here that a lot of people don't know. When a lot of people draw the flower of life, they draw it with 6 petals. It looks like a hexagon. From my opinion, the true flower of life is not a 6-petaled flower. It is 7 petals. It's a heptagon. It is, and okay, so where do I could go into the math of this, but the waves, when they come out of the singularity, the energy is coming out of a 7-pointed structure. The heptagon is like this stepchild of the polygons, because nobody pays much attention to the heptagon. Okay, and you as you look at it, I could draw it. I drew it. Let me show you, so maybe you can see what it would look like.
I threw up a picture of the flower of life. I don't know if you guys can see the picture. I try to throw up.
Okay. So the flower of life is this is the heptagon, by the way, and I'm breaking it down into 7 7s, 1 7, 2 7s, 3 7s, 4 7s. These fractions, because the fractions describe energy in something, a vortex called the crystal spiral, that's different than the Fibonacci spiral, because this one actually has repeating numbers and allows the vortex to close a circle and return home, and you establish memory. The Fibonacci spiral is constant expansion, and it never returns home, and you don't have memory, and you get loss of energy ultimately, and it fragments and goes back into the 0 point. So they're different. These are different spirals, and this is the thing that I noticed that we have going on out in the community, is that everybody's drawing this 6-petaled lotus, which is beautiful, but it's not in motion. It's static. In the universe and nature works on motion. The heptagon, because it's asymmetric, that's a very important property. It allows for the energy to close back into a like closed loop structure. So everything we see is in cycles. The energy will return to its point of origin. So we do see this in the feminine. If you go into Egypt and you look very closely at Tos, his consort, Seshat, she carries a 7-pointed like crown, and this is in my opinion, this is representing the heptagon, and this describes how the energy comes out of the singularity to form those geometric structures that I mentioned, the 1089 multiples that were listed, that are able to house the energy, the light, into containers that are stable structures to give rise to physical form. And she actually, I think it's most people would probably not argue that that the matriarch, the feminine, has been suppressed, at least in the last couple of thousand years. Because when I read the Old Testament and the New Testament, I'm not seeing a lot of women in there. And it's true that we've had this imbalance, I think, from the patriarch. Now we all have the masculine and feminine within us. So I'm not taking a shot at the men. I'm saying that the way the universe works, when I studied how the waves come out, they're always bidirectional waves. There is one magnetic wave with one dielectric. It's like DNA. There are like two waves, and they are balanced with one another. So it's when you become imbalanced that you have these issues, or we go through where we have imbalance and we're not in harmony. We probably use it to learn a lot, but the matriarch, to me, seems like they have been suppressed for a little while. And she actually was Thoth was the teacher, but she created everything. But if you go to Egypt, you won't see a lot of her. She's there, but you have to pay very close attention. But if you see that 7 point, there's a stalk coming down. So some people would say it's got 8, but no, it's a 7-pointed heptagon. And we could get into why that's important, but the energy is actually coming out of a heptagon-based structure. So it's in the mathematics that I have. It's in the book, and it describes how the energy comes out and forms these containers that we just talked about. Because why? Because on Tesla's etheric lattice, those nodes that are on his lattice are describing constraint. It's a constraint framework where the electromagnetic energy is coherent and it falls into these nodes and forms these structures. So that and there's so much more that's in there that I began to remember a lot of the energetic structures. But again, before I went to Egypt, I had read like Sarah Bressman Cosme. She's got several books that are out there. I had read these books, and then something was awakened that I needed to go to Egypt and touch the Sphinx. And I was supposed to get some more geometry and some more information, because crystal, like stone, can store information. And so that's why I went to Egypt. And I put on the first day, there were 33 people in our group. And we ended up going to the Sphinx, and I put my hand on the side of the Sphinx, and it's like I didn't get anything, and I was thinking, where's the information? And then a couple hours later, then Daniela and I were remembering certain things, about being very familiar with one another. And then I returned, and the math and everything continued to come as we went across the globe and met a lot of people during that time as more of the math came to me. So, which was a magical trip.
Yeah.
Egypt has so much energy that's still there and very, very active. So I know I try to streamline it, but there's a lot of different parts that are there, that the book goes into a lot more information, and the information is still coming to me. And so I'm even getting more and more information as we go. So
Jackie had a quick question for you guys on this one too.
Yeah, this may be too far out of the box, but I'm wondering, you said that the hourglass is the breath, earth is breathing, we breathe.
Mm-hmm.
Do we, with our emotions and intentions, are we giving off some sort of sacred geometry? I'm very curious about that, like in a metaphysical sense.
Yeah, so here's the thing, your thoughts, which are in motion, are geometric. So when you're thinking and you're creating geometry, you will pull, based on resonance, what you are thinking. So if you're vibrating at a lower vibrational frequency, you're angry, you're upset, and you're not heart-centered, you'll create a distorted geometry, and then you will resonate with another individual that's out, on the planet that matches that through resonance, and you will pull them to you. And if likewise, if it's higher, which then you're gonna, they'll say you're gonna attract that, you're gonna pull that to you. It will accelerate towards you. And because of, if you understand this etheric lattice and everything, it makes the Jedi and because then you can manipulate, or cancel certain waves and makes things appear that don't have any mass. So there, in the movies, this isn't as crazy as what you might think, because your thoughts will create the geometry. And this is why people need to understand the etheric lattice, because if you understand the etheric lattice and through the thoughts and the geometry, you can actually use it, much like a Jedi would use it, to manifest, to entangle yourself with an object, to make it float, and do those kinds of things. Yeah. So yeah, I hope that answers that. But yes, your thoughts are geometric, and they're motion.
Are like sigils also sacred geometry?
Like a sigil, like you're saying, like a symbol,
like a money sigil. Yeah, how money creates that and creates that picture, or
maybe it's your thoughts.
Yeah, so it's definitely energy. So this is why in the corporations, the people at the highest levels will create the right geometry to pull their energy to their companies so that they thrive. Yeah. Like you just have to look at Google. You just have to look at some of if you begin to understand the geometry, you're like, wait a minute, not everybody. I'm sure somebody that works for, some of the companies and they're at the lower, they don't know. They don't have that awareness yet. But my goal is to improve the awareness, because there's a lot of things that are happening planetarily speaking that are being shielded, that are not, I think humanity needs to know. Like Tesla's notebooks disappear. Like when he died. So one of the things, let me show you this, because I didn't even get into the ancient hieroglyphs, but he spent his, I think, last 10 years or so, because they kind of like bankrupted him. He didn't have a lot of money and ended up working in the New Yorker hotel. Well, his room number was 3327. His room is still there. We stayed in it on January 6th of 2024. So we stayed in it like almost 1 year ago. And that number, 33, if you take it times 27, is 891. And if you add its mirror, 198, you get 1089. The first fundamental. So there's like these things that are all over. And of course, he did a lot. He understood this grid. And so where did those notebooks? I mean, a lot of the trunks disappeared when he died. They got many of them back, but like 20 trunks didn't come back because of the implications on propulsion. Like if you understand the etheric lattice and it's like 0 point energy, and its resonance, you're talking about propulsion that doesn't use gasoline, it doesn't use coal. You're talking about resonating with the invisible field, pulling that energy. Now you have basically so much energy available. It doesn't matter where you go, because the constant between the universe is just space. It's the invisible space, which is how these other craft are moving. So you're talking about revolutions in transportation, communication, and all these areas that are energy dependent, that could utilize the etheric lattice and the geometry thereof to pull the energy. So those notebooks probably disappeared. They were probably in there. I mean, he understood resonance. I mean, he was using resonance to tap the planet to pull, because everything vibrates, and he was tapping into biological systems using resonance.
And there is a still Tesla center here close by me on Long Island in Shoreham. He has his laboratory, and it's a beautiful Tesla Science Center that still carry the Tesla legacy, and it's just beautiful. They have a statue there, and it's just still going.
Because he wanted to give the energy to the people, wireless energy, free. And imagine what would have happened if that would have happened about 100 years ago, where we would be today. But now it's time,
It's time.
It's time that humanity has that information, and you're not going to read about it, because if this information is known in these pockets, they're not going to release it because they're using it, right? They're using it for certain systems, and it's time that humanity has the information so that they can use it. We can clean what? Can you imagine? We could clean water, which would be very expensive, but when energy is no cost. Can you imagine that you never pay another electric bill? You slap a device on your house, you're just pulling it out of the etheric lattice through resonance, and you're powering everything.
Yeah, pulling that energy out of the ground, pulling it out of the air. Yes, most definitely. And Jackie had another question that was along the lines here of, sacred geometry. She was wondering, do you think like crop circles are also a language?
Yeah, all the crop circles, especially the ones that were left a few years ago, they were most of those were leaving the geometry for us. But then there are certain groups on the planet that didn't want that to be visible, and so then you can see that those aren't appearing at the same, because you could actually see in some instances, I saw videos where something was flying over, it's like a light, and you could see the actual geometry coming out. Yeah. Nassim Harriman did a lot of stuff, and he was looking at that, and he was seeing the beautiful structures and the information, because geometry will be the divine language. What I noticed is everything is proportions. Everything is about proportions and these ratios, symmetry, balance, resonance. These things are incredibly important. This is the mathematics that's universal. Yeah. And
then
that's
going back to the book, what's one of the key things that you want, people to know about your book?
So the key things, I'm not so much about the spider, although the divine made the spider, put the stamp. So that hourglass and the breath and how the universe breathes, and of course we breathe, is actually, it's not a fear symbol. It's actually has a purpose and of how things actually operate, how the waves come out, expand, return. It's the inhale, it's the exhale, then the inhale, right, and then the pause, just like the universe does. But the main thing is about the etheric lattice and how we can connect, and we can pull through resonance. We can pull energy through resonance. It's not an extraction. It's more of a resonance with another object. A lot of people don't realize that colors have shapes, and people don't realize that a color, you can be in resonance with a specific color, and you think, oh no, we wouldn't be in resonance with the color, but the colors actually, when they go to a prism, the refraction, they have different angles of refraction. Different angles means they have shapes. So everything in the universe only does two things: vibration, and it does shape, which is internal angle. That's why I was stressing it earlier, is that everything is frequency and angle, and shape is ever much as important as frequency. Shape is incredibly important. So if
anybody has any questions too, how can they get a hold of you if they want to pick your brain a little bit more?
so right now it would be my through my university email. We're putting together another website, but for right now it would just be the letter C and then Vierra, VIERRA @pacific.edu. And I'm in the process of developing my own YouTube channel too, where I'll start putting smaller videos to kind of explain things incrementally in small bite size. So I'm thrilled to be on your platform, because this is the first that I'm releasing the information, and I'm excited to get it out to the people, because the math doesn't belong to me. It just came to me. The math has been on the planet. It's an old mathematics. It's been on the planet before, but some people say it's new because we don't remember it. And so it's new and old at the same time. But it really, I want like engineers, I want individuals to take it and put it into application. But you really are the device. So when I talk about technology, this is so that you learn to use the information so that you have complete sovereignty, and no one has the ability, because you can manifest something, you can lift something, you can do that through your own particular avatar, not be dependent. We can use technology as a bridge until you get there, but ultimately you become the device. You are connected to the living life force yourself, and that will supersede anything else. So it's really a journey of the remembrance and getting yourself in that position.
Yeah, Dr. Ibrahim Karim talk about a lot about the life force energy. Yes.
Yeah, his work is spectacular. And it's off the grid too. A lot of people don't know. He wrote a physics quality book that's outstanding that I read a lot. A lot of that overlaps with my findings that I haven't had time to go into.
And I've been stealing all the questions. Hey, Brad, did you want to throw anything out there?
Well, first of all, I say, man, my mind is you've hit something in there. It reminds me of Glastonbury and the Georgian Pilgrim that night. Man, I definitely took some information there. So much resonated with me. I mean, one thing that definitely come back to me actually was Egypt. When you said about the calling to Egypt, I've actually got that calling to go in 2027 for the eclipse, because the eclipse is on my birthday. But I have been before, like a couple of years ago now, when I was 12. And when we went there, I went with my parents. We had the choice to see the pyramid or Sphinx. It wasn't I ruled back then; it was one or the other. And I went to the Sphinx, and I had an incredible experience there actually when I touched the Sphinx. And I believed this to be true for a long time. But this actually happened until I realised some of the things I saw when I touched it couldn't have been true, because when I went to the Sphinx, I touched it, and I thought I went in and through it, And also, I saw a green gem, like an emerald green gem, and the whole place was flooded. And I seriously went there as a kid, and I went to the Sphinx, but I must have had some kind of vision or something, because then I used to tell people, say, no, it's flooded, and all this down there. And just incredible. I mean, I loved all of it. I think it's a wonderful. Thanks for coming, guys. First of all, it's definitely activated some stuff in me. I'm really looking forward to reading more of your book. I've begun it. Obviously, it's been the holiday time. My kids are off. My daughter's come, so I haven't had a chance to get deep into it. But just reading the first 3 chapters, it's really well written. It explains it beautifully so far. So maybe you could tell people where you can find the book, how to get the book. And I'm a little bit of a plug the book if
sure. Yeah, absolutely. So
maybe hold the book up again too, so people can see it. Yeah, there you go.
So the book is on Amazon. If you search the 363 code. So the reason if we look at the title of the book, because you look at it and it's got Tesla's geometry, and it will have Isis's breath, because the breath has to do with the energy coming out, the expansion. So in Egyptian, you look at their history between the gods and the goddesses. She represents the magnetic coming out of the singularity, which gives rise to the physical form or the creation. And Osiris represents the return, the dielectric, the return waves going back into the singularity to complete the breath cycle. Again, it's the masculine and the feminine in balance with one another. And thus, this is why. I could go into DNA, because actually I didn't mention it, but I found, because I study DNA as well, I found that in those shells that I gave you that were 1089 based, I can map them back to 1 base pair in DNA and 10 base pairs of DNA, which is 1 complete turn. So I can map the geometry of the physical DNA with the bases and the backbone of DNA to these shells that I was giving you that are in the etheric lattice. So we're definitely connected. Our DNA is physical DNA is connected to the etheric lattice, which I didn't get into. I didn't mention Brett mentioned the Sphinx. The Sphinx is 66 feet tall. It's 792 inches in its height. If you add its mirror, 297, you get 1089. So it's connected through communication with the square-based pyramid.
And that's why we put Anubis.
I got one more question for you. So obviously with the pyramids lately, we've seen these LiDAR scans, incredible, which I've looked into, and the data looks pretty legit to me, like the research, and you can back it into they've seen. So what do you think? Do you think they've got these coils? I don't know, you must have seen this.
Yeah, I think, that what's going on there in Egypt, these civilizations are very ancient the further you go down. And when I was looking at the hieroglyph, just to give you an example of their knowledge, they had the complete etheric lattice, and they understood it, and they put it in the numerology of this hieroglyph. Like you'll find 33s there, the number 27 is there. They're just representing it. And the 7 is there, and another 7. All of these things that are incredibly important is embedded in the numerology. So they knew this, and the deeper you go in, you find more and more that's down as far as to reinforce just how high they were. Yeah. I mean, I think it was us. We left the information. We knew that we were going to go through.
Well, you said it earlier, and you said it perfectly. Like a lot of people see what's going on now as an awakening, which is kind of true. People are waking up, but more importantly, it is a remembrance, and that's something.
Because
that's the fun part, is to remember what we truly are and what we've probably already done here.
We literally become the multidimensional beings.
Yeah. Again, we've come into this separation part, duality, separation, and now it's coming back to unification again. So exciting times, man. Exciting times.
Yeah. No, it's incredible. There's so much happening right now.
This is beautiful. It's just fast, and it's just, we are here right now at this time, coming together, all of us. And we also put Anubis, that was my Zoika. She's walking with us now, and she is in divine realm, connecting with us and communicating. And also when we were talking about the 13th sign, is the official use. Like, it's a great decider. Astrology is amazing. And Isaac Rodriguez is like the master of it, Cider astrology, to really remember our essence, where we're coming from the galactic center and divine essence, and bringing up all our here we are.
Yeah, because it's all of the etheric lattice, all of that, which is like a framework for how the energy goes. It's going to go all the way, because it's fractal. It's going to go all the way down to the subatomic, all the way to the cosmological. So all the geometry, all that's just scales. It's the same. It's the same fundamental laws that are being applied.
Beautiful communication with with dimensions.
I think it's perfect to be able to, since we, didn't get it all out, it's a perfect opportunity to ask you guys back again.
Oh, that would be all right.
We have to have you guys back on.
Absolutely.
And obviously, Craig, when you get your channel running, please feel free to share it on our page. That's what our page is about. It's about bringing. That's why it's a round table.
Yes,
there's no head of this table. It's a round table.
Yeah, I mean,
share your content on the page. We'd love that, and look forward to watching it, my friend.
And I'm happy that it came here, because I have been, waiting for the timing of the release of this, because the release and the synchronization is very important, and where it goes is very important. Right, and who gets it? It's very important.
Heart-based.
Right? Everything is heart-based, and that's how the information comes. It's heart-based, and that's very important. Hope people understand that you can reach such high levels that surpass the intellectual aspects. It's being mediated through the heart. Yeah. So, yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, but I appreciate both you, Brett, and Scott, for bringing us here.
Thank you.
We appreciate you guys. I mean, be able to get your voice out and be able to hear this, and we've always felt like, numbers are just as special, that if people tapped into them too, like you said, their frequencies, their energy. And once you tap into those, these messages have been left through even like insects and spider webs, everything like you're talking about. It's just fascinating.
Yeah.
So glad to have you guys on.
Yeah. Like you said, the numbers are their geometry and they're alive.
The
numbers are they're not there for bean counting. They're actually, there's a whole new mathematics coming.
Not just for sheep at night. It's such a pleasure having you guys on.
Thank you again. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Our pleasure.
We'll most definitely do this again. And
And
hey, Ramblers, thank you so much for coming out.
And I just want to say, like, let's hold Oragaya Pachamama and sending Pachamama, sending her so much love because she's birthing the new earth, and let's make the easiest possible with so much love.
Yeah, baby.
Most definitely. Hearts up, everybody. Thanks for watching us, and we'll catch you guys next time.
Okay, thanks.
Thank
you very much.
Much love.
Bye-bye.
I'll stop streaming now, and then they'll end here in a second.